So next on the agenda is an update on conservation grant projects, and we will have two speakers, Fallon with the Healthy Earth Organization and Federico with the Suncoast Reef Rovers. And they, again, this is an update for what grants we've given in the past, some preliminary results, and just educational for us to take to our own communities where it's appropriate. This relates to our public engagement priority action, number 1, to promote environmental literacy, awareness, and stewardship through expanded education and engagement opportunities for the general public. So I'm very excited to hear what we're going to be hearing next. So our two speakers can definitely unmute, and we're going to be starting with the Underwater Marine Debris Reporting and Removal Project.
Hey everybody, this is Fallon again with the Healthy Earth Organization, and our project is called Underwater Marine Debris Reporting and Removal Project. Next slide. This is me, and this is our organization. The organization really focuses on Southwest Florida, and we do, like it says, we do projects and we do learning programs all throughout Southwest Florida, whether we do beach cleanups, reef cleanups, the horseshoe crab tagging, community gardens, and then we partner up with like early learning community centers. We partner up with a lot of schools to provide information about what's going on in the environment so that kids can get more involved. Next slide. Our work, for the reef cleanups that we do, or underwater marine debris cleanups, is we really want to be able to take as many pounds away from the reefs as possible, because we want to maintain their ecosystem and have them healthy and thriving. These are pictures from not the conservation grant, but from the past. And one of the biggest impacts that we take away was that last picture there. That's our board member or chairman, John Harold, at one of our cleanups, where we found a casting net with live fish in it, and they were still alive. They were literally stuck to the casting net, just waiting for somebody to help them. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we, continue to do the work that we do. And next slide, please. And this is just the overall numbers of what we've done throughout since the very beginning. We're a brand new organizations. We've been around since 2020, but we've connected over 4,000 pounds of debris so far through our beach cleanups and our reef cleanups. And then we really rely on community members, whether that's divers or just people that just want to help, so that we could, be able to do the work that we do. Next slide. So this is the cleanup that we did in July. We have asked for the grant, for the conservation grant, for 3 dives, 1 in July, 1 in August, and 1 in September. These dives are, we partnered up with FGCU's water school. They have a diving team, and the diving team has really been great to us. In the picture, the first picture there, Callie Johnson, which runs that program, was super, super happy to be able to be included in this, because most of their dives, they're either they have one boat out of Bonita Springs, and then that boat really gets used a lot. So they were really thankful, because they would either have to drive 2 hours out to do any dives or any reporting. So this really, really helped their program, and it really helped us make a difference. We for this dive, we went out July 23rd. It was a Sunday, out from Fort Myers, and we went out with H2O Offshore Adventures, which is really the only charter boat that will go out of Fort Myers. We reached out to so many different places, and no one else was able to help us. So we were really grateful to be able to partner up with Captain Anthony from H2O Offshore Adventures to be able to do this. The locations that we visited for this first dive were the USS Mohawk, a tugboat, Charlie's Reef, and then 3 school bus reefs. And what we learned in the process was that we were going out too far. So like our last and previous cleanups from before, we were going near shore where we were finding anchors, we were finding cast nets, we were finding derelict crab traps, and that is heavy, and so it added to the pounds that we were collecting. But because we were going so far out, we were finding things like that second picture there. It's just like debris, plastic, and a lot of fishing line together. And then we found a lot of like just weird plastic. Like we wouldn't, like it was warped. It's been there for a long time, but we were really disappointed with the amount of trash that we collected, because the average amount that we collect is about like 300 plus. And in this cleanup, we picked up around 110 pounds. So really, the next 2 months, actually our next dive is this Sunday. This Sunday from 8 a.m. all the way to 3 p.m. we'll be going out. And we've just decided to really revamp the sections that we're going to. We're going to be doing it closer to shore these times. The locations are like Edison's Reef, Pace Place, and then some barges that we know are heavily trafficked areas. We know we're gonna find crab traps, because the whole goal is to get as many pounds as possible to make those areas healthy for the environment and for the fishies. The dives are about like 30 feet deep, and the visualization is okay. I mean, it's given on the different days. It's different on how visible the water, or you can see. But yeah, the one after this Sunday will be in September, and that's on the 10th of September. And we're going to be, after this dive, because what happened with the last, we're going to be seeing like, do we need to go back to those reefs, or do we need to go to the other ones that are also closer to shore? But next slide. And then this is just our why. This is just giving you guys numbers, which you guys work on conservation as well as that we do. You know, it takes forever for things to break down, if ever. And this is one of the main reasons why we do what we do. Next slide. And then if you want to learn more, you could just scan this QR code for our website. But
thank you, Fallon. Terrific, exciting work. And as we know, cleanups can be on the water and they can be on the land too, because they definitely are interrelated. Next we have Federico.
Yes, good morning again. My name is Federico Vasquez, and I'm a volunteer diver with the Suncoast Reef Rovers from Venice. I want to thank Ms. Hecker and Ms. Ayadeva. Did I pronounce that right? Ayadevaya, and the CHNEP.
Close enough.
Ayadevia. Oh, sorry. And the CHNEP staff for this opportunity. So in 2022, the Suncoast Reef Rovers applied for a grant for the removal of derelict, discarded and lost fishing gear from Venice's reefs, or artificial reefs. And today I'm going to be providing an update of this grant. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do. And the Suncoast Reef Rovers are a small 100% volunteer-based diving group from the Venice area. None of our volunteers receive any compensation, and our group comprises divers, kayakers, vessel operators, and topside volunteers. We have 6 active board members, and we recently became a 501c3 organization. What we do, well, in a nutshell, we remove trash from the ocean, and all our cleanups happen below the waterline. The Suncoast Reef Rovers have been around for approximately 23 years, and it started as a social club and it evolved into an environmental group. For approximately 2 decades, the Suncoast Reef Rovers have been doing or conducting cleanups at the North and South Jetty, the Venice City Pier, the Venice mooring field, and now we're doing artificial reef cleanups. We had cleanup at the North Jetty this Sunday. I'm not sure if you heard about it. We knew close to shore reefs were filthy because our divers dived them frequently. And in 2021, and thanks to a grant we received from Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, we conducted our first artificial reef cleanup with only 6 divers. And in just a few hours, we were able to retrieve from that reef 812 pounds of mostly derelict crab traps. And that's how our artificial reef cleanup program started. Next slide, please. So when we dive for crab traps, that's what we see. We find rope, that's a telltale, and we follow the rope and we find the crab trap. For this grant, we conducted 5 cleanups, and we had V1 artificial reef, which we did 3 times, V2, V5, and the Venice mooring field. Next slide, please. So when we do artificial reef cleanups, we basically have to charter a dive boat. We set off from Venice, the Venice Fisherman's Wharf. We have a safety briefing, then we set off to the dive site. Next slide, please. Divers jump in the water and they look for trash, crab traps. And there we have 2 divers that just found a rope and are working on a crab trap. Next slide, please. So 2 divers are attaching lift bags to a crab trap that they just found and are ready to inflate these and send them to the surface. What we do, the boat anchors, divers go in the water and search in different directions for crab traps. We usually do these with like 6 divers and 1 or 2 topside volunteers. Divers find crab traps, they send them to the surface. If we have kayakers, those kayakers will grab the lift bag and will paddle to where dive boat is anchored. But if not, divers have to swim it back to the dive boat. Next slide, please. That's a picture where we have kayakers, divers in the water, another vessel that we brought, in addition to Venice Dive Center's vessel, which is the only vessel that we've been, that has been willing to carry all that trash. These cleanups, for safety reasons, are not open to the public. We do them as a group, as the Suncoast Reef Rovers, and divers need to be comfortable diving in murky water, low visibility conditions. They have to be acquainted with the use of lift bags. Next slide, please. So the amount of crab traps that we find in the close to shore artificial reefs of Venice, I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but it's really concerning. Sometimes divers find multiple crab traps within arm's length of each other. They're sometimes bundled up. Next slide, please. So here we have a diver swimming back to the dive boat with 3 crab traps. Next slide. There we have Tyler, our group president, and he's doing all the heavy lifting, lifting the crab trap from the water. Next slide. That's another diver bringing another crab trap to the stern of the dive vessel. This is really hard work. It's not easy. Next slide. That's a picture of one of our artificial reef cleanups. I believe that was the first one we did. That's V1. We were there 3 times this year, and in, I would say, less than 2 months, we were able to remove more than 50 traps from that close to shore reef. Next slide, please. Another picture of our hull. Next slide. We were done with that dive and we're heading back to port. I want to point out that a permit is needed, and an FWC derelict crab trap removal permit. It's needed for the removal of crab traps. They're considered property. And once you remove them, you have to submit a final report after each cleanup event. Next one. So once we get back to shore, we have to unload all that. We have to cut the ropes. We have to inspect each and every trap. We weigh every single item that we remove from the reef. We take pictures. We fill out a report. And in lieu of sending those crab traps to the landfill, the ones that are in reusable shape, we got approval from FWC, and we're bringing them to the FWC Sarasota County Venice PD facility in Venice, and they are returning those to their rightful owners. Next slide. That is our, I believe, our last cleanup, and we docked at the FWC dock, and we're in the process of weighing a trap there. Next slide. Another cleanup. In that cleanup, Ernesto, I'm not sure if he's on the call or not, but he volunteered in that cleanup. Next slide. That's one of our hulls. Venice Dive Center. Next slide. So the items that are not recyclable or reusable, like what you see in that picture, that's basically trash. Wire traps are basically not recyclable, so they end up in the dumpster. We weigh every single item. That's part of the report as well, and it's again tossed in a dumpster. Next slide. And that's a picture of our group. Those were the volunteers that participated in that cleanup. We did 5 as part of this grant. Next slide. That's a picture of crab traps on the far right at the dock of FWC's facility in Venice. Next slide. Yeah, same thing, another set of traps at their dock and CHNEP's banner. Next slide. Venice Mooring Field, that was one of the cleanups that we did as part of this grant. And this cleanup required, different logistics, because we were not allowed to bring our vessels nor a dive vessel. We were taken to the dive site by Venice PD, fire department boats, and they were really, really supportive, in addition to CETO. Next slide. That morning, Rick McNamara, who's also another board member, basically conducted a safety briefing. We had, I believe, 37 volunteers. And after that, we set off and went in different directions looking for trash. Next slide. So that picture, you can see divers getting ready to go to the dive site. Next slide. So this cleanup, we did find, since it was an anchorage area that's located east of the Venice Yacht Club, we found like many heavy items that had to be brought to the surface using lift bags. And some of them were big or bulky, couldn't be put on vessels. They had to be towed back to the boat ramp by sea tow. And I believe that was like a bundle of anchors. Next slide. Yeah, all the trash and all the debris was brought to the boat ramp, where it was separated by type, photograph, weighed. We weighed every single item that we removed from either the reef or the anchorage area. You can see, it's hard to see, but there's a canopy, there's a scale, and we have a dumpster back there. Next slide. Yeah, since it was an anchorage area, we found a lot of big anchors and a lot of chains. Next slide. That's what we found there. I would say like 50% of all the debris was that, anchors and chains. Next slide. The bulkiest item was that sailboat mast. I believe it was like a 40-foot mast, and it had to be floated and towed back to the boat ramp. There, volunteers cut all the rope, chopped that into pieces, and it ended up in the dumpster. It was so covered in barnacles that it could not be recycled. Next slide. And that's a picture of most of our hull. A lot of big and bulky anchors. The sailboat mast, you can see that it was chopped in pieces, and it's to the left of that stair. And we even found a kitchen sink, a cast iron kitchen sink. Again, every single item was weighed. Next slide. So we had 5 cleanups, and this is our final grant summary. We had 5 cleanups. We did 3 at V1 Reef. We did 1 at V2, 1 at V5, and 1 at the Venice Mooring Field. We spent 410 volunteer hours. We were able to remove 116 crab traps from the marine ecosystem, which combining all the trash altogether tallied 7,702 pounds of marine debris. The volunteers, you can see under the total number of volunteers, that's the number of volunteers we had per event. So during the V1 and V2, we had only 8 volunteers, which pulled 1,800 pounds. V1 again, 17 volunteers. That time we had kayakers. We pulled 1,183 pounds. V1 again, we had 8 volunteers. We only pulled 614 pounds because we had to call off the second dive due to lightning. Then we did Venice Mooring Field with 34 volunteers, and we pulled 2,422 pounds. And the last one with 7 volunteers, we pulled 39 crab traps, 1,657 pounds. So the amount of crab traps that we're finding in Venice's close to shore artificial reefs, it's really, really concerning. There's a lot of rope around, and it poses like entanglement issues for divers, marine creatures, birds, you name it. So they need to come out. Next slide, please. So since we weighed every single item that was removed from these artificial reefs and the Venice Mooring Field, we were able to put together this pie chart, and weight-wise, crab traps represented almost 63% of the weight. On the left side, you can see anchors and chain, and that was mostly because of the Venice mooring field cleanup. Cast nets only were like 0.4% weight-wise. Recyclables were only 0.1%, and when I'm referring to recyclables here, it's just glass and aluminum. We're not counting the crab traps or anything that was sent to FWC as a recyclable item. So they're under crab traps. Next slide, please. So positive outputs of this project. We have cleaner close to shore reefs and anchorage area. We have a reduction in the number of crab traps that are actively ghost fishing. We have a reduction of entanglement risk for marine creatures, birds, and humans. We estimate, and this is an estimate, that 80% of the anchors, chain, and derelict crab traps were recycled and were not sent to a landfill facility. And most of those anchors that were in good shape were taken by Venice Police Department, and they're going to be used in case they have adrift vessels after like any storm events. We were able to get the Venice community and the government agencies involved, mostly during the Venice mooring field cleanup, and that's why it's because the other events are basically internal events. We realized that the marine debris problem is worse than we thought it would be, but we proved that with a small group of volunteers, we can have a huge impact on the marine ecosystem. Next slide. And a huge thank you to CHNEP, FWC, Sarasota County Sheriff, CETO, Venice Dive Center for allowing us to put all that trash on their vessel multiple times. The Venice Fire Department, Venice Police Department, especially Officer Paul Joyce, and all the volunteers that helped during this cleanup. And there are too many to list. Without their support, time, effort, patience, and/or funding, this project would have not been possible. Next slide. I think I'm done. Yes, I'm done. And that concludes our presentation of our grant update.
Well, thank you both. Very exciting. Thank you for the work that you've done and you continue to do. It truly is helping our region, our waterways, and it's inspirational, and it shows, again, as you've both said, what volunteers can do and what partnerships can do. It was wonderful to see the city and the agencies involved, and the businesses that you were able to contact with and provide the services that you needed. Just terrific. Any comments from any members?
Hi, good because it's still morning. Good morning. Just a thank you for this like monumental effort. This is huge to both of you. Marine debris is one of those things that kind of keeps me up at night, for a lot of the reasons that you said. Crab traps, fishing nets, monofilament, they just keep working after they've long been lost. So, and thanks for trying to find homes for these things, and recycling them and repurposing them. That's good too, because then it's not going to the landfills. I know there's for our monofilament recovery, we ship it to Berkeley Fishing Line Company, and they melt it down and create artificial reefs with it, or underdock reefs, and other products. I think Patagonia Clothing Company too. I think they take old fishing nets and spin them into polyester for clothing. So maybe as part of your research, you can find even more ways to reuse these wayward products and keep them out of the landfill. But but great effort, and thanks again. It's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in on behalf of CHNEP to say how honored we were to be able to have the opportunity to support such incredible work on behalf of your two organizations and the many volunteers that participated in these projects. It makes, we spend, I was joking at the beginning before this meeting started that, we just push paper over here and we don't often get to have the, the reward of seeing, the outcomes of what we do. And just having, you come and present this really kind of fills our cups too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have to say that it was not easy. We had to reschedule some events due to weather, due to red tide, due to Venice's dive center vessel going into their annual inspection, and it was, yeah, it rocked the boat. It was not easy.
And that underscores the importance of logistics and how difficult it is when you're doing it with volunteers and volunteer agencies and entities whose resources are pulled in many other ways. So kudos to your accomplishments. And yes, as Jennifer said, it's very inspirational. So thank you. Any other committee members have anything to say?
I'd like to ask, was this done following the hurricanes last year?
These cleanups were done, I think the first one was February and last one was done like 3 weeks ago. Most of them were done like in a month and a half.
Okay, thank you.
And we had to do them like back to back. We think that like at the Anchorage area, some of that trash, because we also found vessel components. So we know some vessels got smashed and destroyed. So we found vessel components underwater. And some of the crab traps might have been, gotten entangled in the reef after those hurricanes. But we found crab traps that had tags that dated back to the 2001, 2002 crab season. So they've been underwater for at least 20 years.
Wow. And I know, Fallon, you said yours were recent, so it was great to get out a lot of the debris before. Oh, I'm not going to say it, the next hurricanes. So thank you.
Yeah, when you go to the beach or to the pier, to the jetty, I mean, you look at the water and it looks clean. But once you go underwater, especially at those areas where you have like fishing piers, jetties, artificial reefs, there's a lot of trash. And it's going to take years to clean that up.
Thank you again. And again, these are examples of how creative and incredibly important our grant program is. So think about where you can use these grants in your community. You may not all have underwater applications, but the creativity of the volunteer, the incorporation of businesses and the public agencies, I think are examples that we can all use in our communities for potential grant opportunities. So thank you both for being on our call and at our meeting today and for presenting.